If you read the great campaign book, What It Takes by Richard Ben Cramer, you'll note that the 1988 presidential campaign season didn't really begin in earnest until 1987, really right after the 1986 midterms. If you turn your attention to the elections of the 90s, you'll notice that the 92 presidential season doesn't really begin until the beginning of 91, and likewise, the 96 season does not really begin until 95. The same goes for 2000. Candidates start getting in the ring in 99. The 2004 and 2008 elections, likewise, you're looking for the year before. So Obama, for example, announces his campaign in the beginning of 2007. Donald Trump announced his campaign for the presidency in June of 2025, which is actually kind of late, all things considered. More recently, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, who for a moment looked like he might try to win the Republican nomination or thought he might be a serious contender for it in the 2024 election, really began campaigning in a serious way, in a way that made it clear that he was running for president in 2023. So tell me why, when I sign on to the internet, I'm seeing people in 2026, in February of 2026, arguing about whether or not they would vote for Gavin Newsom in 2028, in November of 2028. Now, I don't have any particular opinions about Gavin Newsom. He doesn't strike me as an especially successful governor. He's not a politician that I have a lot of fondness for, in as much as I have fondness for any living politician. I don't think about Gavin Newsom. But there's discourse all over the internet, at least in the spaces that I spend, of people, presumably on the broad American center left, arguing about whether or not they're going to support Newsom in 2028. I suppose under the supposition that Newsom is the frontrunner for the nomination and is in some way likely to receive the nomination. Perhaps Newsom, in this view, is a representative of the Democratic establishment. And then there's a lot of backfilling based off what I would argue are flawed assessments of what happened in the 2016 and 2020 Democratic primaries. But in any case, assessments nonetheless that Newsom has been anointed as the guy to beat in 2028. And I have a couple thoughts about this. And the first one you might guess from how I began this video. This is very silly. This is very silly. I want to emphasize that we don't even know who really is going to be in the race for the 2028 Democratic presidential nomination. We don't know. It's too early. The idea, for example, that Newsom is somehow the frontrunner depends on putting a lot of weight into early presidential polling, which is, as someone who's been covering this stuff for a while, is one of the worst things you can do analytically. Don't put that much weight into these polls, but putting a lot of weight into polling, it is putting a lot of weight into Newsom's media presence, the fact that he seems to be visible on cable news, for example. It's treating Newsom as a fait accompli because I guess he's a guy you can name. And that's very silly. What's also silly is the idea that he is like the presumptive nominee of the Democratic establishment. I'm not super plugged in, right? I'm not someone who is on the daily chatting with Democratic operative types, but I'm reasonably plugged in. And I think I can say with a certain amount of confidence that Gavin Newsom, who does, of course, have supporters among prominent Democrats, is far from having consolidated the support of the Democratic establishment. That's not a thing that has happened whatsoever. In large part, because Newsom represents just a faction of people. Unlike Biden in 2020, he wasn't a former vice president. Unlike Clinton in 2016, he's not a former secretary of state, a former near nominee, and someone who had large amounts of buy-in from across the universe of Democratic Party actors. He's not even like Obama in 2008, who very much, when he ran, represented the anti-Clinton side of the Democratic establishment. So far, in terms of the universe of presidential politics, Newsom just happens to be a particularly prominent guy. And it is, again, I'm going to use the word, a little silly to treat him as if he already has it locked up. Between now and 2027 is virtually a lifetime in American politics, and it's going to be a moment before we really get a sense of who is running and who is going to be an especially viable candidate. And these things are just hard to predict. I'm going to say that now. They're hard to predict. Last thing I'll say is that if you are one of these people preoccupied with discussing presidential politics, I would say to take that energy and spend it actually doing something in the real world. I would focus on that. I would not be worried about the presidential election. If there's a candidate in your district for House or for State House or wherever that you think would be good for your community, volunteer for them. Go help them, A lot of things you can do that don't involve wasting mental energy thinking about the presidential election. And in fact, I would say that one of the problems of center-left politics in this country for the last generation has been a lack of interest in things happening at the local and community and state level. That is where things begin. And if you are interested in building out a more progressive world, then really everything starts local, in the same way that conservative efforts to transform the country started from the bottom up. So that's my thought. Newsom, who cares? What matters is what you can affect around you at this moment, and you should be focused on that. Take it for what you will.